about is JT Sports Max, you guys, with another video. In this video, I'm here with my Los Angeles Chargers 2019 training camp preview. This is the last team that I have to do to finish up the AFC before I move on to the NFC teams and preview those teams. So before I begin, make sure to like, subscribe to the channel, upload NFL videos and NFL content daily. And let's get into it. So the LA Chargers 2019 training camp preview, going to give you guys some players and some things to watch for the LA Chargers when their training camp begins. So the first thing I got to say is that I thought Anthony Lynn was robbed of NFL Head Coach of the Year last season. He lost to Matt Nagy. Matt Nagy, all due respect to him, I thought he did a great job. Bears went worst to first, but I thought Anthony Lynn did a very phenomenal job. I mean, when you look at the halftime adjustments that his coaching staff and him and his team made after halftime at Kansas City Chiefs game when they came down from behind, I think that was that Thursday night game. Then when they went to Pittsburgh and beat Pittsburgh, came from behind and beat Pittsburgh at Heinz Field. That's a very tough place to play in, and winning at Heinz Field is very, very hard. So I think that he should have won the NFL Head Coach of the Year last season, but I mean I can't be bad with Matt Nagy winning it. But I think Anthony Lynn is, and his coaching staff for the LA Chargers is highly underrated, and I think they deserve a lot more respect than what they get. When you talk about some of the best coaching staffs in the NFL, you should mention the LA Chargers and Anthony Lynn in that conversation. I don't care if he hasn't been coaching for that long. They did an exceptional job last season. I think they are one of the most underrated coaching staffs in the NFL. So I'm just going to take this time out of this video to give them the respect that they so deserve, because I think it's really disrespectful how you talk about some of the best coaching staffs and nobody ever brings up the LA Chargers. So giving my gratitude to them there. So now let's talk about some things that we need to look at for the LA Chargers. So first thing we need to look at is the offensive line. So the offensive line is pretty much set in stone. It's one of the better offensive lines in the NFL. And they only have one position that's in question. So at left tackle, you got Russell Okung there. The left guard, you got Dan Feeney. Center, you got Mike Pouncey. And right guard, here's where the competition gets interesting. So it's a position battle at that right guard spot. Both of these right guards are pretty solid. It's between Michael Sheffield, who only allowed 9 sacks last season, and Forrest Lamp, who hasn't really played the last few seasons when he got drafted by the Chargers a couple of seasons ago. So both of these guys are going to be battling out to see who ends up starting that right guard spot. And not because these guys are bad, it's because both of these players are really, really good. Forrest Lamp's a guy who the LA Chargers have had high expectations for when he got drafted a couple of seasons back, but hasn't really been able to play due to injuries, and now he's fully healthy. So I'm pretty sure they want to see him get on the field and see what he can actually do. And Michael Sheffield was pretty good last year as well, only allowing 9 sacks. So it's going to be interesting seeing who ends up starting at a right guard spot, because both of those guys are really, really solid starters there at that right guard spot. So it's going to be interesting seeing who starts there. Then at the halfback position, is Melvin Gordon. For those of you guys who haven't heard, Melvin Gordon wants a new contract. The LA Chargers aren't willing to renegotiate or give him a new contract. He wants to be traded. And if he doesn't get a new contract or isn't traded, he could end up sitting out when the regular season begins. So it's really important that we find out who's going to end up being that starting halfback to replace Melvin Gordon when the season begins. And we got Austin Ekeler and Justin Jackson now. Both of these guys are pretty solid halfbacks, pretty solid starting material. Both of these guys have had a significant amount of playing time. I think Justin Jackson's even started a game or two, and he was really solid as well. Austin Ekeler is like a pinball. He's like a guy who just bounces around the field, really small, but really agile, really elusive, really hard to bring down. And Justin Jackson is pretty solid. I think he was an undrafted guy last season, and he was pretty solid when he started that game. I forgot what game it was, but I think he was pretty solid. So it's going to be interesting seeing who starts at that halfback position if Melvin Gordon does indeed intend to hold out of training camp and ends up holding out when the regular season begins. And then we got to talk about the wide receiver position. So at the wide receiver position, they got Keenan Allen. We already know what Keenan Allen is. He's on his way to becoming a very good wide receiver. He could end up creeping up into that top 5 wide receiver discussion. Then we got Mike Williams. Mike Williams had a very big improvement compared to last his rookie season. Had like 10 touchdowns last season. So Mike Williams is a guy who's going to have to step up and be that number 2 wide receiver since they lost Tyrell Williams to free agency to the Oakland Raiders. So it's going to be interesting seeing Mike Williams how he steps up as that number 2 wide receiver and can he continue to be consistent. Then you got Travis Benjamin. Travis Benjamin is going to be interesting seeing what they do with him. I don't know if he's going to end up being a rotational guy on the outside or if he's going to end up playing that slot receiver spot for the LA Chargers. But he's a speedster, a very good deep threat. Gives Phillip Rivers a very fast target to throw downfield to. Travis Benjamin is a guy who I think could end up being a sleeper on this LA Chargers offense. Now we talk about quarterback Phillip Rivers. How's he going to be? Is he going to be able to lead this LA Chargers team to the Super Bowl? Going to be interesting. And then also the backup quarterback spot. You got Tyrod Taylor, Cardale Jones there. I'm interested in seeing how Cardale Jones does. He's been a little bit of a developmental project now. And I think this is the season that he's going to have a pretty good preseason or he could end up getting released when it's time to trim down the ranks from 90 guys to 53 guys. So that's it for the offense side of the ball. And then we move on to the defense side of the ball. Not really a lot of positional battles. There's only really one big position battle to look at when the LA Chargers begin their training camp, and that's at that safety position. You got Rayshawn Jenkins, Adrian Phillips, and Jalen Watkins there. And also you have the guy who they drafted in this year's NFL draft, Nazir Adderley. So it's going to be interesting seeing who's going to be their starting safety at one of those safety spots because they're very low to that safety. A lot of talented guys in that safety group. A lot of people want to see Nazir Adderley paired up with Darren James, but Rashawn Jenkins wasn't that bad. He was actually pretty good as well, had a pretty good grade according to Pro Football Focus. So it's going to be interesting seeing who ends up being that starting safety because I really want to see Nazir Adderley and Darren James. Nazir Adderley, he's not Darren James, but he's very good in coverage, which I think makes him an upgrade over Rashawn Jenkins. But Rashawn Jenkins wasn't that bad. Adrian Phillips isn't bad neither. So it's going to be interesting seeing who starts at that safety spot for the LA Chargers this season. So I'm going to be keeping tabs on that. And that's the only position battle on the defense side of the ball that I really had to talk about. So now I'm going to be talking about my players to watch. Hunter Henry. Hunter Henry is a guy who missed all of last season. He played a couple of snaps in that New England Patriots loss and the playoffs and the divisional round, but didn't really do anything. I think he's a big sleeper this season, especially from a fantasy football perspective. If you're looking at a sleeper tight end, definitely look at a guy like a Hunter Henry. And I think Hunter Henry is a guy who can end up breaking out simply for the fact that I think that the LA Chargers have another weapon on the offensive side of the ball. A guy like Hunter Henry, he has good speed, good size at that tight end position, a nightmare to match up against for linebackers and safeties. I mean, he's too fast for most linebackers and pretty much too big for most safeties. So it's going to be interesting seeing him throughout training camp now that he's fully healthy. Didn't see him all season last year. He tore I think he tore his ACL or something like that around this time last year, or I think it was like OTAs or something like that. So it's going to be interesting seeing him back during training camp for the LA Chargers. Interesting in seeing what he does. Then I want to talk about Mike Williams. Mike Williams is a guy who really improved the last season a lot compared to his rookie season. So it's going to be interesting in watching him throughout training camp, see how he takes that next step forward in his development. I think he could end up having a 1,000-yard season maybe. So now on the defense side of the ball, I'm interested in seeing Jerry Tillery, defensive tackle out of Notre Dame. I predicted that the LA Chargers would end up drafting him, and that ended up happening because I think Jerry Tillery was really underrated. Some people didn't even have him going in the first round. Some people thought he was a second rounder, but I think Jerry Tillery could give the LA Chargers a very dynamic pass rusher up front. He's also very solid stopping the run as well. So I'm interested in seeing him also. Then Thomas Davis. So Thomas Davis, interested in seeing him as well. A little bit up there in age, but I think he can still be pretty productive on this LA Chargers defense. And this LA Chargers team as a whole, I think this LA Chargers team is probably, in my opinion, the second best team in the AFC. And this is coming from a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. I pride my channel on doing non-biased takes, but I think the LA Chargers could end up going to Super Bowl next year if they're able to find a way to beat the New England Patriots, which I believe they will be able to because they have such good of a coaching staff, which I praised earlier on in this video. So I think this LA Chargers team during training camp, those are my things to watch. Let me know what you guys are going to be looking forward to watching for the LA Chargers when they begin their training camp in 2019. Also, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more NFL videos and content.